Hello and welcome back. Over the past few videos, we have been diving into each of the 5 competencies within the CASEL social emotional learning framework. And so if you missed any of them, you can go back and check them out. We do build these competencies in a sequential order. So if you want to start at the beginning with self-awareness, you can, and then we go to self-management, social awareness, and then our 4th competency, which we're going to talk about today, which is relationship skills. So relationship skills, I think, is one of the things that I have heard from more teachers than any other skill or area or characteristic, whatever you want to call it, that our kids really seem to be struggling with in this semi post COVID time that we're in. Every school that I go to, I have teacher after teacher talking about their kids' relationship and communication skills and how hard those seem to be for kids. It's almost like they've forgotten how to communicate with their peers. And if we think about it, it makes sense. Our kids were isolated for a very long time. They were communicating with, whoever lived within the 4 walls of their home. They were doing school virtually. And so communication just looked very different than it ever has before. And so now we're throwing kids back into in-person learning and into more regular social situations, sports teams, after-school activities, things like that. And they're struggling. And it's really not a surprise. And so what can we do about that? So we're going to talk through 5 things today that we can do to kind of help our kids with those skills that I kind of see going together: relationship skills and communication skills. And so the first is within a classroom, helping kids practice cooperative learning strategies. They weren't working in cooperative groups for a really long time, and maybe they were in breakout rooms on Zoom, but that's certainly not the same as working in a group in person with other kids. So teaching them, practicing, modeling those skills like listening to one another, disagreeing with each other, building consensus on something when we're working together on a project. All of these are skills that haven't really been used a whole lot. And so we need to kind of reintroduce those. Another is teaching kids how to communicate their wants and their needs. For a lot of kids, I don't know that they realize that they can communicate those things within the context of a relationship, or they don't know how. So whether we're talking about a friendship or a teacher-student relationship, parent-child relationship, how do we help them to understand we all have needs and wants, and sometimes we need to communicate those things and advocate for ourselves to get the most out of a relationship? So this is really important with a friendship, right? When one friend maybe isn't treating the other friend super well, how do we communicate, or how do we teach our kids to communicate what their needs are? Advocate for themselves in that situation. Hey, you're not being a really good friend by doing this, and I really need this out of our, whatever this is, out of our friendship. I need you to do this so that I feel better about our friendship. And, understanding that how this is communicated is going to look very different depending on the age of the child. That's also important in a teacher-student relationship. We want our kids to understand what their needs are and be able to tell us. We also usually have a good pulse on what kids' needs are, but it's really important that we hear from them also. Knowing the difference between what I'm going to call above the line and below the line behaviors. I read those terms somewhere years ago, and I don't know where, and I'd love to give credit to whoever it was. but those terms really stuck with me. So above the line behaviors being all of those good characteristics of a healthy friendship or relationship, and then below the line behaviors being the ones that are characteristic of an unhealthy relationship. So what are specific above the line behaviors versus below the line behaviors? What does that look like in a friendship, in a relationship? Um, Below the line behaviors, you can, go into a discussion about bullying. Those are below the line behaviors, and how in a relationship we really need mostly above the line behaviors, right, for it to be a healthy relationship. And then lastly, it's important that we, within the concept or competency rather of relationship skills and communication skills, that we really kind of arm kids with conflict resolution strategies. We have to get our kids to the point where they can start to solve their own problems. That's kind of the goal, right? We want them to be independent. So teaching them specific resolution strategies, but also understanding that they are going to need to be walked through that process over and over and over again before it sticks. They're going to need to see these strategies modeled. They're going to need to be reminded of these strategies. And while that may feel frustrating at times, doing that hard work up front is really going to help in the long run when we have kids who are able to kind of solve their problems on their own. And then one other strategy that falls into this competency, but we've already talked about, is respectful disagreement. And so if you want to know more about that, you can go into our last video on social awareness and kind of hear me talk about that. So I hope that you will join us next time. We'll go into the last competency, which is responsible decision making. It's sort of the holy grail, right? We've built up their self-awareness skills, and then self-management, social awareness, relationship skills. And now we're to that point where we want our kids to be able to make responsible decisions for themselves. And so we'll talk more about that next time, and I hope that you'll join me back for that.